What happened when nuclear test went wrong and obliterated the Earth? Everything is submerged in water, and well, leadership came together to build our new home. Do you want to learn how to play Flotilla?
In this video, we're going to take you through the full rules for the game, and if you stay tuned till the end, you can pick up some tips along the way. Coming up. Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University.
Now, let's get to the rules for Flotilla, game by J.B. Howell and Michael Mihalsik and published by WizKids. It's an alternative version of the 1950s, and the nuclear tests out in the Pacific Ocean have gone way too badly. The landmasses and populations of the Earth are destroyed, and the survivors are now struggling to live on a big flotilla of rubbish in the middle of the ocean. In Flotilla, 3 to 5 players try to carve out their identity in this new world. Each player plays the game in 2 parts. First, they'll play as Sinksiders, scavenging the ocean for whatever remains. They'll explore the oceans, they'll dive for resources, hunt for valuable artifacts, and build point-scoring outposts. Then, once players feel they've scavenged enough resources from the ocean, they may go Skyside, where they'll start building up the flotilla on which they'll try to rebuild society. They will spend resources to build up the flotilla, research to improve technology, and continue to build outposts, all of which will score points. Players decide independently when they're going to switch to the Skyside, and so players will be at different phases of the game, interacting with each other in different ways. The game ends once a set number of victory points have been collectively scored, and the player with the highest score wins. I'm not going to take you through the full setup of the game. I'll introduce most of the key setup concepts as we introduce them through the rules. Firstly, you'll set up a supply of victory points equal to 100 points per player in the game. Players will be gaining their victory points from this pool, and once the pool is gone, the end of the game is triggered. Leftover victory point tokens are set aside, and they can still be gained after the main pool is gone. This is the main board, and beside the main board you'll find Sinkside objectives and Skyside objectives. Each of these is a stack of 3 tiles in decreasing value, and there should be 1 stack per player on each side. Players should familiarise themselves with which objectives are in play before starting, because these can be 25 to 30 points, and it's a big part of your final score. At the top of the board, you will see the market track and the current prices of the game's 4 resources. And there is a heavy market manipulation element to this game, and so this will be in play a lot of the time. Each player takes a player board set to the Sinkside and slots in a toxicity track with 2 toxicity markers like so. Each player then takes the 6 starter cards that represent their actions, again flipped to the Sinkside, and next to the player board places 3 skiffs and 6 outposts. Each player also takes 10 coloured guild seals. Equally space the turn order tiles around the central hub for 3, 4, or 5 players. The half showing your turn order should be adjacent to the central hub, and it shows your starting money. Finally, place your 4th skiff on the second half of the tile. You're now ready to play. Flotilla is played in a series of player turns. Each player will take turns in sequence clockwise around the table, starting with the first player, until the end of the game. Player turns are driven by the crew cards in their hands. On each turn, the player chooses 1 card from hand and then plays it face up into a personal discard pile. The player then resolves the actions on that card. This will start first with sailing or income based on the icon in the bottom right corner of the card, and only then resolving the text effect on the card. The next time it comes to that player's turn, the player will play a different card from the cards remaining in hand into the same discard pile. As such, a player's pool of available actions will continually reduce until the player takes the specific action, allowing all cards to be taken back into hand. As we'll see later, through the game, players will be able to add new and more powerful cards to their hands from those available on the main board. This gives the player more time between retrieving cards and gives them more variety or the ability to specialise. All players begin the game on the Sinkside, showing this side of the player board and this side of the cards. At one point during the game, each player may make the switch to the Skyside. This is a permanent change and it results in the player flipping all cards over to the Skyside as well as the player board. From this point forward, a slightly different set of actions will be available based on the new actions printed on this side of the cards. Each player makes the decision to go Skyside completely independently. As such, during the game there'll be different numbers of people on the Sinkside and the Skyside. You don't even have to switch to the Skyside at all during the game if you don't want to. There are different strategies and there are advantages and disadvantages to making that switch either early or late. However, the basic flow of a player's turn upon switching to the Skyside does not change. Player still chooses one card from hand and plays it into a discard pile. It's just that it will come from the Skyside cards. The game continues in this manner until the end of the game is triggered by the final victory point being taken from the victory point pool. Players will finish that round and then play one more round and the player with the highest score wins. So now we'll take you through all of the actions in the game, starting on the Sinkside and then later coming back to talk about the Skyside. The first step of resolving any Sinkside action is to resolve the sale value, which is this number in the compass in the bottom right corner of the card. For each point of sale value, you may move one skiff to an adjacent hex around the ocean tiles you've already placed. Your sale points may be split between different skiffs, skiffs may share a hex, and if a skiff which is carrying resources, we'll talk about that later, passes through your drop point, then you may take any resources from that ship and place them in your reserve. You need only to pass through the drop point, not stop there, to unload cargo. Once you've finished resolving your sale value, you can move to the action printed on the card. First, we'll look at the founders, represented by the red compass. Founders are primarily concerned with exploring new depths of the ocean while they're on the Sinkside. There are two main actions on a founder card, drawing ocean tiles and placing ocean tiles. When drawing ocean tiles, you will draw them blindly from this black bag containing all of the hexagonal tiles in the game. Flip all of the tiles to the ocean side, which will show one of these depth icons down here in the bottom right corner. Then, for all tiles you've drawn, resolve toxicity. For each toxicity icon showing on a tile that you've drawn, advance your circular toxicity marker one step. If your toxicity marker ever reaches this final space, return it immediately to the first space and then advance your toxicity penalty marker one step to the right. At the end of the game, you will gain or lose points based on where this marker sits, and having a lower toxicity will win you some ties in some scenarios that we'll talk about later. After you've finished drawing tiles, you'll then place tiles into your ocean area from among the tiles that you drew. If the card allows for fewer placements than draws, then you'll place what you can and return any leftover tiles to the bag. Tiles may be placed anywhere and at any orientation into your portion of the ocean, with only 3 restrictions. First, the tile must be adjacent to at least one of your other tiles. Secondly, the darkest tiles with a depth of 3 may not be placed adjacent to the lightest tiles with a depth of 1. So this tile could not be placed here, and in fact in this circumstance could only be placed here. Thirdly, you cannot place a tile such that it encroaches on another player's area. This means you cannot place a tile such that it connects your region to another player's, and you cannot place a tile that would enter another player's protected area, which is defined by drawing these 2 imaginary lines out from the player's starting dock. Many ocean tiles will show one or more artifact wedges, in one of three colours. If you place an ocean tile such that it completes a circle of matching colours, then you find an artifact. Draw an artifact tile from the small artifact bag and then immediately gain the benefit printed on the danger side. Then flip the tile over to the non-danger side and put it into the first slot of the matching colour. You'll be able to see a small line at the top of the artifact tile that tells you which colour it relates to. The first artifact found in a given colour will cover the icon already on the board, and subsequent artifacts will add to it. You do not gain the benefit that's printed on the back of that tile. However, Skysiders will be able to gain that benefit with one of their actions, which we'll go through later. Finding artifacts is a way that Sinkside Actions makes Skyside Actions more powerful. If ever you are to gain an artifact and there are none left in the bag, instead gain 4 points. A couple of other things you need to know about the features of the tiles you're placing. Each tile will show a barrel in one of the 4 colours, and this is the colour of resource that that tile will yield. Some tiles will show a construction site, and this is a place where you can later build an outpost to score one of the game's objectives. Finally, there's some important things to keep in mind with the founders in the first half of the game when preparing to go Skyside. When you go Skyside, you'll pick up all of the ocean tiles that you've placed and then flip them over to their Skyside sides. These will all show portions of the Flotilla watercraft that you can then build. The sky side of a tile will have the same colour of resources as the sink side of the tile, and so the colour mix in the sink side phase of the game prepares you for the tiles you'll have to build in the sky side period. The other important thing to note is that it's a lot easier to draw tiles during the sink side half of the game than it is in the sky side half. And so if you plan to build a lot of watercraft in the second half of the game, you'll want to make sure you have most, if not all, of those tiles before you go Skyside. Next, we'll talk about the Delver actions, which are represented by the blue dive helmet. While you're on the sink side, Delvers will dive under the water trying to gather resources from the tiles you've explored. This is done with a roll of dice. There are 3 colours of dive dice in the game, representing the 3 depths of ocean. You will roll 1 die for each of your skiffs based on the depth of where it's currently located. So in this case, the player would get a shallows, a shelf, and a depth die, plus any additional dice printed on the Delver's card. So for your basic Delver, it's 2 additional shallows dice. Roll all of the dice at once, and then resolve their effects. All dive symbols may be resolved in any order you choose. First, resolve any of the barrel symbols. For each barrel, you may take 1 resource, matching a location where you have a skiff, and place it onto that skiff. It does not matter which die shows the barrel. Here, even though the depth 2 die shows no barrel symbols, you can still draw resources out of depth 2 spaces using the barrels on the other dice. The only restriction on gaining resources is that a skiff may hold no more than 4 resources at once, so you must move it and unload it before you'll be able to fill that one again. Depletion symbols will result in depletion of resources across your ocean. The first depletion symbol you roll in any given round is free, but for all the rest you must deplete 1 hex, taking a depletion marker and then covering up the resource. From this point forward you can no longer gain resources from that hex, and you ignore any skiffs that are in depleted hexes when determining how many dice to roll. You must choose one of the hexes containing a skiff to deplete, and if you deplete all of your skiff's hexes, then you must deplete one without a skiff. When you roll a survivor, you may claim 1 bonus from the survivor track. This is located in the center of the hub board. Advance the survivor disc 1 step, and then claim the benefit you cover. This benefit lets you gain a new guild card into your hand from any one of the 4 guilds, and for this one, you must gain 2 toxicity, but you can immediately claim an artifact, and then choose one of the 4 guild dials to advance by 1 step. These dials don't affect Sinksiders in any way, but they have a significant impact on how Skysiders score. As we'll see later, you want this dial to be high on the colour that you have a lot of tiles for. The next icon is the sonar icon, and for each sonar symbol you roll, you gain the current sonar benefit. At the start of the game, this will be toxicity, but as the game progresses, it will become toxicity with a survivor, then a survivor, then a survivor and an extra die, and finally a survivor, a point, and an extra die. When you get the extra die bonus, you roll an additional die of the same colour as the one which showed the first sonar icon. You cannot roll more dice of a given colour than are available in the game, even if you get additional rerolls or have a lot of skiffs on the board. Sinksiders have no impact over where the sonar track is. This is increased through the game through the action of Skysiders. Players who go Skyside early will be incentivized by these victory points to improve the sonar, but it does make the diving action more profitable for players who are still on the Sinkside. The final icon, present only on deep dice, is toxicity, and here you simply gain a toxicity in the usual way. The next type of card is the traders, represented by the green scales icon. Traders deal in transactions, represented by this icon, and for each number shown there, the trader may make one transaction. The options for each transaction are shown in the top corner of the board: resources, outposts, and skiffs. For one transaction, the trader may buy or sell a single resource barrel at the current market price. When buying resources, the resources go straight into the player's reserve, and when selling them, they must come from the player's reserve. Player cannot sell resources that are still on a skiff. After a player has finished all transactions, the price for any goods bought or sold will shift. Goods purchased become rarer, and so the price moves up one step per barrel bought. Any goods sold become more plentiful, and so the price goes down one step per barrel sold. Price shifts are all made at once you've finished all transactions, not after each transaction. As such, all purchases or sales of a given resource type will be at the same price for your whole turn. Note that you cannot make both purchases and sales of the same resource type on the same turn. This prevents you from buying goods to push the price up and then immediately selling them at a profit. However, speculating on the market from turn to turn is a key part of the game, and there's nothing wrong with buying up cheap on one turn and then selling from a profit with a different trader on the following turn. You can also score victory points directly through extreme manipulation of the market. Every step that you would force a price to drop below minimum would score you 1 victory point, and every step you would drive the price above maximum would score you 2 victory points. While this may seem like a high price to pay or a very low discount to take, this is still a slightly better exchange rate than cashing in that money or resources for points at the end of the game. The second type of transaction is to build an outpost, and this is how you score the game's objective tiles. To build an outpost, first pay the price of your topmost remaining outpost. Then take that outpost, and then build it onto one of your ocean tiles. In most cases, you're going to build it into an empty construction site slot. However, you may pay an extra $10 to place it floating in an ocean. Then choose from the face-up objectives on the sink side of the board, and then immediately score victory points based on how your ocean or your player board meets that objective. For example, here you would score 6 points for every shelf-bearing tile, that is, a tile of level 2 depth, that you have in your ocean. This is up to a maximum of 36 points. Gain the points you qualify for immediately, and then, in the case of the top 2 cards in each stack, remove the top tile. The tile below it will be worth fewer points for each instance of the objective, but you'll usually be able to score more instances for a similar maximum score. You will never remove the last tile from a stack, and so the lowest scoring one will always be available for any remaining players. The final type of transaction is to buy a new skiff. To do this, spend $12 and then deploy a new skiff immediately onto your starting dock. That's the one represented by this icon. Skiffs are a temporary investment. You will sell them all back when you switch to the Skyside and get some, if not all, of that money back. But more on that later. The last of the 4 major card types is the speakers, represented by the yellow handshake icon. These allow you to gain influence with the 4 guilds in the game, and these are represented by the 4 dials on the main board. When you gain influence with a guild, advance your coloured disc one step around the wheel for that guild. When you enter or pass a space showing a bonus on the side, then you immediately gain that bonus. For example, a resource or some money and points. When you find yourself in this position and you gain influence with that guild, you have two choices. You may choose to simply advance to the next space as usual, claiming the benefit, which is to gain the top card from that guild's crew deck. This is taken and placed straight into your hand, ready to use on the next turn. Alternatively, if you're in that wedge and you're not interested in the cards, when you gain an influence you can follow this arrow and skip straight ahead to the fourth wedge. You bypass this benefit, but it gets you around the wheel more quickly. Whenever you reach or pass the top step on a guild track, then you place one of your guild seals onto that guild. If you've run out of seals, then you gain 2 points. At the end of the game, each guild is resolved for area control. The player with the most guild seals gains 10 points, and second most gains 5. Note that when you're a Sinksider, this benefit on the Founder's Wheel is to both draw and place an ocean tile. When you're a Skysider, you just draw the tile and place it into your reserve. The Scholar card works differently to the others. A member of all 4 guilds, the Scholar exactly copies an opponent's top side card. That is the top card on any one opponent's discard pile. This will give you the flexibility to use the valuable cards that other players draw from the guilds, or to use an action twice between retrievals. Note, however, that while you're a Sinksider, Scholars may only copy the cards from other Sinksiders. Your final basic card is the Captain. The Captain's action is to rally, and this is how you get your discarded cards back into hand. Count up all of the cards in your discard pile, including the Captain, and then take them back into hand and gain $1 per card. Then you may either end your turn, or this is the moment where you may choose to move from the Sinkside to the Skyside. This may only be done with your Captain card, and so you need to time it appropriately. Switching from Sinkside to Skyside is a major turning point of your game. It is the moment where you stop searching the ocean for resources and you start building your flotilla. When you announce that you will do this, go through the following steps. First, retrieve any resources presently on skiffs and move them straight into your reserve. Then you'll sell all of the skiffs you have on the water. The money you earn per skiff depends on how early you go Skyside, and refer to the dock tile for your player count. In this 5-player example, the first player to go Skyside would gain $16 for each skiff on the water. The last player to go Skyside would gain only 6. Skiffs that you've sold as well as unbuilt skiffs are removed from the game. Next, you'll pick up your ocean tiles. Take the starting tile and simply flip it over. If you had an outpost on the construction site on that tile, place it back. In this way, you're only allowed to use this tile once for an outpost. Find any other tiles containing outposts and remove the outpost from the game and return the tile to the bag. Remove any depletion markers and then pick up all of your remaining tiles, flip them over to their sky sides and place them into your reserve. These are now the tiles that you'll have available for building the flotilla. Flip all of your cards over to the sky side and flip the outer portion of your player board to the sky side. Finally, you may build one or more tiles according to the normal tile building action, which we haven't gone through yet. The number of tiles you may build once again depends on how early or how late you go Skyside. In this 5-player example, the first player to go Skyside may build 1, and the last player to go Skyside may build up to 3. Once you've finished the transition, including building any tiles that you've chosen to build and scoring them, play will proceed to the next player. And so now we'll go through the changes and the new actions available on the Skyside. The first thing that's new when you switch to the Skyside is that you no longer have skiffs, so you no longer have sailing. Now instead you'll gain income with each card you play. Simply start each turn by taking income based on the card you've played. Next, we'll talk about one of the major new actions available on the surface, and that is building ocean tiles, or building up the flotilla. Once again, this is that action that you get to take immediately upon switching to the Skyside. To build a tile, choose any one tile from your reserve, and then pay its cost, which will be between 2 and 4 resource barrels in the colour of the tile. You may then place the tile anywhere, and with any orientation, into your flotilla. The art does not need to match up, although it's going to score you a lot more points if it does. The only restrictions on placement are the same as for ocean tiles as a Sinksider. It must go adjacent to at least one of your existing tiles, and it cannot encroach on a neighbour. Then you'll score victory points based on the value of the district you've just placed. This is determined in 2 steps. First, determine the size of the district, and the district is any contiguously connected sets of the same coloured flotilla tiles. So by placing this tile, it has created a green district of size 3. You'll then multiply that number by the current value of the guild. Check the value of that guild on its guild dial. In this case it's 2. Then add 1 up to a maximum of 4 for each of that guild's building on that district's watercraft. So if we look again at this district, it is on a watercraft which also spans this red district and this green district. And this green district contains one of the guild's buildings. So for this watercraft, the green guild's value is 3, 2 off the dial and 1 for the building. Once again, remember that a guild's value can never exceed 4. Finally, multiply the size of the district by the guild's value on that watercraft and gain that many victory points. In this case, 3 times 3 is 9. District size is measured by number of tiles, and so if this weren't here and instead we built a green tile into here, the size of this district would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Even though this hits 2 parts on the same tile, you don't count it twice. As such, this district would score 4 times 3 for a total of 12 points. When you place a tile with 2 non-contiguous portions on it, you only score the single highest scoring district you create. So, placing this tile creates a 3-tile district with 2 buildings and a separate 3-tile district with no buildings. So, you would choose only to score the points for this district. If you build multiple tiles on the same turn, then you score each tile separately after you've placed it. Finally, most of the tiles contain at least one sonar icon, and when you build a tile such that it completes a sonar circle, you improve the quality of the sonar. Advance the sonar disc 1 step and immediately score the victory points printed under that step. You'll have to weigh up the fact that while there's good victory points on offer, you will be making diving less dangerous and more profitable for your Sinksider opponents. If you are to increase sonar and it's already maxed out, you'll gain 5 victory points. The other new action available for Skysiders comes from the Delvers. They can no longer scavenge the oceans without a skiff, so now, up on the flotilla, they're going to conduct research. To conduct research, roll the number of research dice based on the Delver's card. Then resolve the icons on the dice. Any numbers inside a white circle represent an income of money, so here the player would get a hit of $14. Each guild symbol is represented on one of the dice faces. If you roll 3 matching guild symbols, then you get to claim the bonuses from that guild's artifacts. As such, the more artifacts the Sinksiders have been finding, the stronger the research action might be. This benefit could be drawing ocean tiles into your reserve, gaining money, gaining improvements on the guild tracks, or gaining victory points. Each die also contains 1 wild symbol, which can count as any of the 4 guilds. Finally, 2 sides of each die show a cog symbol. If you roll 3 cogs, you make a technological breakthrough and may choose any one of the 4 guild dials to increase by 1 step. This once again can significantly level up the number of points that you can score from your flotillas if you pick your favourite colour. The speaker action, improving your position on the guild tracks, does not change between the Sinkside and the Skyside. The only difference to remember is that the bonus at the Founders lets you draw a tile only, not build one. The trader also works in much the same way. You'll still be buying and selling goods on an adjustable market. What may change, however, is the dynamics of the market. When only a few players are Skyside and there are a lot of players on the Sinkside, Sinksiders will be gaining resources out of the ocean and then often selling them, generally keeping prices low. This can give early Skysiders a good opportunity to buy a lot of inexpensive resources, particularly with the big influx of money gained from selling skiffs when going Skyside. But once more and more players go to the Skyside, there will be fewer new resources coming into the game, and you may find prices push further and further to the top as the game progresses. Nevertheless, there is still resource speculation you can do to try to level up your money simply through trading resources. Players may still build outposts into their construction sites to gain objectives, but now the objectives will be taken from the right-hand side of the main board, where the Skyside objectives are located. The only difference is that now the cost of building an outpost where there isn't a construction site is an additional $20 instead of $10. Finally, Skyside traders cannot buy skiffs. The Skyside Scholar works the same way as the Sinksider, except he may only copy Skyside cards. And the Captain also works the same way on the Skyside, but gains $2 per card instead of $1. A few notes on some of the effects that you will see on the upgraded cards in your deck. Some cards will come with an additional effect if either a specific opponent or you have a type of card topside. This means on top of the discard pile, and so this card would be worth more if a green card were on top of the previous player's discard pile, and this card refers to your own topside card, which is the card immediately beneath this one when you've played it. Some other cards will become more powerful if you discard matching types of cards. This one, for example, is a speaker who gets more powerful when you discard other speakers. When doing this, you discard the cards in such a way that the card you've played on your turn is your topside card. For the purposes of all of these sorts of effects, the Scholar counts as all guilds. So, when using the Translator's discard effect, as shown before, the Scholar could be discarded as a member of the matching guild. Finally, some cards have a retire effect, and when taking that action you may optionally also take the retire effect as long as you remove that card from the game. The end of the game is triggered when all of the victory points from the initial pool of 100 per player have been claimed. Players can continue to earn victory points from the other ones available with the game. After the end of the game has been triggered, play continues to the fourth player, and then one more round is played, so all players will have the same number of turns. Then proceed to final scoring. Each player gains 1 point for every 5 leftover dollars, and for every 2 leftover resources. Players then lose points based on their position on the toxicity penalty track. Finally, resolve majorities of guild seals on each of the 4 guilds. The player with the most seals gains 10 points, and the player or players with the second most gain 5. Ties for the most are resolved by the player with the lowest toxicity. Players with no guild seals on the guild cannot gain points. So here, pink would gain 10 and white would gain 5. White would gain 10 and both orange and black would gain 5. And here, whichever of black and purple had the lower toxicity would gain 10, and whichever had the higher toxicity would gain 5. White would gain nothing from this guild. The player with the highest score wins. In the event of a tie, whoever has the lowest toxicity wins. If still tied, the player with the most crew cards. If still tied, the player with the most leftover money, and if still tied, victory is shared. And that's how to play Flotilla. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and we hope you enjoy playing.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us by hitting the like button, subscribe to us. You can also hit the meeple in the corner to do so and hit the bell icon so you'll be one of the first to know if we have new videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games photos and reviews.
And finally, if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please write them in the comment section below.
Until next time!